Hi, I am Pankaj. Everyone's talking about AI, it's dominating headlines, sparking debates, and fueling both excitement and apprehension. But let's be honest, it's not just the technology itself that's freaking people out. The rapid advancements and potential implications are certainly unsettling. It's something deeper, something more fundamental that's stirring beneath the surface of our collective consciousness. People are scared of losing their jobs, their sense of purpose, even their very identity, in a world increasingly shaped by algorithms and automation. The anxiety is palpable, and it's rooted in a very real fear of displacement. But here's my question. What if the panic isn't really about some distant sci-fi future filled with sentient robots and technological singularity? What if it's about what AI is exposing about the present moment, about the vulnerabilities and inequalities that already exist within our current systems? Think about it. Really consider the underlying anxieties that AI is bringing to the forefront. We keep hearing that automation is an existential threat, a looming specter that will render human labor obsolete. But to what exactly is it an existential threat? What is truly at risk? It's not a threat to our creativity, our capacity for innovation, or our inherent ability to find meaning and purpose in life. These are uniquely human qualities that AI can't replicate. No, the real threat is to a system that for thousands of years has been built on obedience, control, and carefully managed scarcity. A system that benefits a select few at the expense of the many. Let's rewind for a second and take a look at the historical context. Picture ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. The first grain vaults weren't just for storing food, they represented something far more significant. They were the start of economies, governments, and rigid hierarchies that controlled who had access to resources and who was assigned to perform specific tasks. This was the dawn of structured inequality. Fast forward through the centuries and you get the birth of the work ethic during the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, labor isn't just a means of survival, a way to provide for oneself and one's family. It's elevated to a moral obligation, a virtue in and of itself. Productivity becomes sacred, the ultimate measure of worth. The harder you work, the more hours you put in, the more valuable and virtuous you are perceived to be. But let's be real. Who actually benefits the most from this deeply ingrained setup? Who reaps the lion's share of the rewards? This pervasive idea that if you're not constantly producing, contributing to the economic machine, then you're somehow less valuable as a human being. That's not a fundamental law of nature, an immutable truth of the universe. That's a story, a carefully constructed narrative that we've been told and conditioned to believe. And for the vast majority of people, it's a story that keeps them perpetually hustling for scraps, struggling to make ends meet. All while a tiny privileged group at the top continues to accumulate wealth and power at an unprecedented rate. Now along comes AI disrupting the established order, and suddenly the perceived need for endless, relentless human labor doesn't seem quite so essential anymore. The old moral fictions, the justifications for inequality, start to crack under the pressure. If machines can efficiently perform a significant portion of the work, what happens to all those deeply ingrained rules and assumptions about worth, status, and social hierarchy? Here's the kicker. The uncomfortable truth that we need to confront. Maybe the underlying fear isn't really about losing jobs in the traditional sense. Maybe it's about losing the very structures and systems that have historically kept us divided, stratified, and unequal. What if the real source of anxiety isn't the prospect of widespread poverty, but the unsettling possibility of greater equality? Imagine a world where people are genuinely free to pursue their passions, to explore their creativity, and to build strong, supportive communities. Not because they're forced to earn it through relentless labor, but because it's recognized as an inherent right, a fundamental aspect of the human experience. That kind of freedom is inherently dangerous. Not to us, the individuals who yearn for a more just and equitable world, but to a system that's fundamentally built on keeping people in their designated place, maintaining the status quo at all costs. So, if you've ever felt uneasy about the way the world is structured, about the inherent inequalities that seem so deeply entrenched, if you've ever wondered why the idea of genuine freedom feels so threatening to those in positions of power and authority, you're definitely not alone in questioning the narrative. Maybe what we're witnessing isn't the catastrophic collapse of civilization as we know it. Maybe it's simply the long overdue end of a very old, very persistent lie, the lie that our worth is determined by our productivity, and that inequality is somehow inevitable. And that's a conversation worth having, a discussion that needs to be brought into the light. Thank you for your time.